questions that you may have.
All right. First, I would like to introduce a new a member of the committee who's just gotten here, Kevin McCarty, who actually represents this building. So he has a unique. Would you like to say a few words? And perhaps start with a question or two as well?
With a question or two as well. Well, certainly I've caught the tail end. One thing I don't understand is we have all these committees that meet at the same time.
Yeah, we do that on purpose, I guess.
Yes, okay. Anyway, certainly it's. I'm pleased to be on this committee, and I have a little bit of experience from the local level working on clean energy policy, and certainly know that this is something that we want to focus on to address our environmental challenges of the 21st century, but other public policy issues as well. And so I think that this is going to help the committee and us and myself look at some of the nuances of the proposals this year, but also in the years ahead as well. So thank you for putting this forward, and I'm sorry I missed most of the program, but I have the materials, and the show goes on.
Thank you, Kevin. So your final chart says that you are going to have symposia, try to understand what's really needed to reach those goals. I know, so just in regard to heavy-duty trucking, certainly renewable biodiesel is likely to play a big role. Do you have, and I don't want you to have to talk about things where you're going to be reaching conclusions later, but perhaps just outline for us how you see things moving forward, what role the legislature can play, and if you could perhaps just address those more general questions.
Sure, that's a great question. Trying to knit everything together as we address our air quality and our climate goals is certainly going to be a challenge. I think as we look forward, deploying technologies that will provide near-term benefits in terms of meeting our air quality targets is probably the most immediate and pressing challenge that we think we're going to face. And as we look at the types of reductions that are going to be needed in the South Coast Air Basin and the San Joaquin Valley, significant and near-term emission reductions are going to be very important. And I think as you heard from the E3 and others, there are opportunities to realize those emission reductions in the near term through the deployment of cleaner conventional technologies coupled with the use of renewable fuels. I think that's going to be a very important strategy for us moving forward to meet those goals and to meet our 2030 targets as well. Challenge is going to be how do we encourage and incentivize fleets to acquire and deploy those technologies, and those are some of the things I think we're going to be talking about with stakeholders over the next many months to identify what's the best course of action moving forward. But needing to prioritize those investments does not negate the need for us to keep an eye on our long-term goals as well and the important role that zero-emission technologies are going to play as well. And so being able to support investments in both cleaner conventional technologies, renewable fuels, and zero-emission technologies, I think is where you're going to see three key strategies develop from the Air Resources Board perspective on being able to check a mark in terms of meeting all of these goals by 2030 and even sooner in the case of air quality, which is as soon as 2023.
Oh, well, certainly the air quality benefits we're really looking forward to, as well as the climate goals. Do you want to say anything else in closing?
Well, one thing I think I would like to say is that, we've certainly appreciated the support of the legislature. I think the legislature's investments in low-carbon transportation have really enabled us as an agency and as a state to show leadership, both on the light-duty side as well as in the heavy-duty side. You heard some discussions today about the importance of market stability, the importance of incentives in deploying these types of vehicles. And I think the commitments that the legislature has made to support those types of investments both today and the need for continuing those investments into the future is going to be paramount for us to be successful. And I think what is a common goal and objective of meeting these various targets that we have, both through 2030 out to 2050.
Okay, well, thank you both very much, and thank you to all of our speakers. I've certainly learned a lot today.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now we are ready for public comment, and I have, how many people are interested in giving public comment? Because we do have a fair amount of time. All right, there's about 6 or 7. So why don't we go for about 3 minutes each, given that we have only 6 or 7, and we've got about 30 minutes to go. So we will hear from Mr. Eloy Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members, Eloy Garcia for the Western States Petroleum Association. As you know, our members, the state's major refiners, account for about 90 to 92% of all of the transportation fuels on the road today. So we certainly take and look very seriously at a 50% reduction requirement in our product within 15 years. That is just simply an overly aggressive and somewhat arbitrary target. I understand the roundness of a 50-50-50, but we wanted to make sure we added some context here. 16 billion gallons of gasoline in use today. I think that's the marker that the Air Board has tied to or identified. So in context, that's reducing or removing 8 billion gallons and replacing them with something in 15 years. You heard a lot today about electric vehicles, fuel cell vehicles. You heard the E3 estimates that you need or will need to have about 6 to 8 million ZEVs, fuel cell electric vehicles. Just by context, again, you have about 27 to 30 million vehicles in California today. So the way we look at these, at this reduction goal, and the way we would encourage you to look at it is, whatever you do, be mindful of the policies that you are putting in place. A goal in a year is just simply not good enough. What are the policies? What will it take for us to get there? And we would encourage you to take a look at not just the electric vehicles, but those that are not electric vehicles. How do we responsibly make sure that we have transportation fuels for all of our constituents, all of our customers? I think Assemblymember Burke made the point here that, you know, her constituents, not all, will have access to electric vehicles, and that's true for most of your colleagues in most of the state. So whatever policies we look at, we want to make sure that we're being responsible, that we're not disrupting the availability of conventional fuel supplies as we move forward. The Air Board identified 4 major policies for removing or reducing petroleum use. They were investments in fuel efficiencies. I think those are probably the biggest bang for the buck, fuel efficiency improvements. Land use improvements, SB 375, those are things that your local governments have to deal with to try to effectuate more efficient use of in transportation. Alternative fuels, you heard a lot about that today, and high-speed rail or public transportation. 3 of those 4 policies really focus on the demand for the product, for petroleum use. One of them, in our estimation, the low-carbon fuel standard, potentially affects the supply of the product, of petroleum. We would encourage you to focus and look at the policies that look at the demand side. We think those are less disruptive, will be less disruptive to the economy, to your constituents, and still move us forward in petroleum reduction without disrupting the supply of conventional fuels. So again, I would just leave you with this. As you look at the 50%, look at the policies behind the goal. What policies will we implement, and how can we make sure that those policies do not disrupt conventional fuel supplies in the near term, when I think it will be incredibly important for the economy and for your constituents. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
And by the way, you can stay there for a minute. First of all, if we disrupt conventional fuel supplies, not many of us will be here very much longer. So I'm completely agreement on that. What we need to do, you're right, is to talk about the demand side, which is why in my questions I said, all right, what are the policies we need? There's nothing terribly concrete that we've gotten to yet, but, you know, how many billions is it going to take? Is it 1 or 2 billion? That's not a lot in California. Is it 10, 20, 30 billion? Right. Until we answer that question, we don't know what the feasibility is. So my hope is that over with the work being done at the Air Resources Board, with further hearings by myself and others, that we start to focus in on what it is we need to do. And you're right, to reduce demand.
Right. Well, we appreciate that, Assemblymember. And again, just be mindful of volume, context, numbers. 33 million vehicles, as you know. So when we talk about a million electric vehicles as a goal, that's fine, and we don't take issue with that. We want to make sure that we can fuel all of the vehicles on California's roads.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And again, for us to continue here in the legislature, we have to do that. I will say this, on the biofuel side, I think that we can only get to the scales that are needed if the Western States Petroleum Association members do eventually become big players in this, because you know how to produce large amounts of fuels. Other industries do not.
Right, and we concur with that. And our members are big players in the biofuels world. Some of our members are independent refiners, some of the largest players in the ethanol world across the country. Some of our folks have made extensive commitments to the cellulosic ethanol that you heard about today. If you build it, they will buy it. Will you build it in enough volume? Will you build it in enough, at what price, enough reliability? Will you build the infrastructure necessary to supply it? Those are all outstanding questions. All of our members have made substantial investments, commitments to the infrastructure, to supplying fuels in a reliable and a consistent way, but also in a large way. And that's something that we need to make sure, again, that we're mindful of context, of volume, of size. Our folks are the suppliers of conventional fuels today, and they see themselves as suppliers of fuels into the future. So we're very much looking forward to this conversation, looking forward to how do we effectuate these goals? How do we get beyond lofty goals in a short time frame? How do we, first and foremost, make sure that we don't disrupt fuel supplies? Thank you.
I agree about not disrupting supplies over and over again, and that very much the Western States Petroleum Association, I'd like to say that they could be a great partner in moving this forward.
We look forward to it. Thank you.
Great. Who would like to go next? Fine.
Good afternoon, Chair Quirk, Assemblymember McCarty. Thank you for your time at this late hour. My name is Ryan Kenny. I represent my company, CleanEnergy, and also our trade association, the Bioenergy Association of California. And CleanEnergy is the largest provider of natural gas transportation fuel in California. We have 150 stations statewide, as well as 65 that are public. Nearly all provide renewable natural gas as a transportation fuel. We do appreciate this discussion today, and as this discussion moves forward, we would appreciate the privilege of having a good seat at the table for future presentations and discussions as well. As you might know, renewable natural gas is 90% cleaner than diesel. And it also would provide a great contributor towards the 50% reduction in petroleum by 2030, as well as meeting the greenhouse gas reduction goals by 2030 and 2050. If you take out diesel from the highways and ports of California, renewable natural gas, as I mentioned, is much cleaner. But unfortunately, most of it as transportation fuel is produced out of state. And that's because of significant barriers here in California for cleanup cost, testing cost, and interconnection cost. So as we mentioned earlier, obviously the cap and trade discussions are ongoing, and we do believe that there is a significant role to play for reducing costs that I mentioned, stimulating in-state production, and also stimulating, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, the demand side to switch out from diesel to more renewable natural gas heavy-duty vehicles. Those three bills that are in play right now that would help out with that would be AB 577, Assemblymember Bonilla. That would cover the purification and collection costs. The Biofuels Initiative would cover in-state production in-state production and infrastructure production for ethanol, biodiesel, and biomethane. And also the Assemblymember Perea Bill, AB 857, which would provide $100 million for heavy-duty trucks, Class 7s and 8s.
Well, don't forget my bill, which would ask the state to buy very low carbon fuels as starting with at 3% and eventually getting up to 10% as a way to help get the industry started.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Anything to get the industry moving, and a lot of it, of course, is the demand side, as you mentioned earlier. And we do believe we can provide the fuel, but we need to have more heavy-duty trucks on the road as well. Just a couple points I want to make to conclude my remarks. Just getting back to what was mentioned earlier from previous presentations, zero-emission strategies are actually based on zero-emission tailpipe, not zero-emission upstream, and which is why a full life cycle analysis is critical. We also disagree with an earlier assumption that compressed natural gas trucks would need to be removed by 2050 to meet greenhouse gas reduction goals. We don't believe that's true. RNG as compressed natural gas can produce significantly lower carbon numbers than even renewable diesel and can deliver carbon negative numbers for trucks today, and also at a significant cost discount to diesel. It's also
Could you wind up?
Sure. I know I'm going long. Just to summarize, we do believe that natural gas trucks will deliver near zero NOx and a potentially carbon negative performance for eight-wheelers. We'd love to have incentives based on heavy-duty trucks and remove diesel and go towards renewable natural gas. So thank you for your time.
You've got some wonderful ideas there. Do see Taylor Glass on your way out. He's my staff member dealing with this issue. We'd very much like your ideas, and we will take a look at them in the future.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right. Who would like to speak next? Well, come on. I saw more hands than that. Yeah, there we go.
Good afternoon. My name is Lise Torres. I'm here on behalf of the Utility Reform Network, or TURN. And TURN advocates on behalf of ratepayers and consumers at the Public Utilities Commission. And I just want to thank the chair for holding this hearing. It was very informative for me, and I think it shows that the solution to California's clean energy future is really going to take a wide range of solutions. And there's no one-size-fits-all or silver bullet to really solving this problem. So I've been working on all three of the large EV infrastructure applications at the Public Utilities Commission. And just to give you a summary, all three of the utilities are proposing to spend over $1 billion in ratepayer money to build EV charging stations. And while TURN is very supportive of electric vehicles and deploying more charging stations, we are concerned about the utilities owning the charging stations themselves, the effect that's going to have on the private sector market, and the fact that the utilities, since they're putting up ratepayer money, they're not really held accountable for ensuring that these stations are put in places where they'll be successful and where they will actually increase EV adoption. And so we're proposing some tweaks to these programs that will allow for us to get the most bang for our ratepayer dollars. And so we really want to focus on putting the stations places that are going to increase EV adoption and places that the private market hasn't been able to step up and fulfill. And so one of those key markets is multi-unit dwellings, so apartments, condos. One of the speakers earlier said 40 to 50% of Californians live in those buildings. And so increasing their access to EV charging is really important. And I think would be a good place for the utilities to step in and a good place for ratepayer adoption. The one thing I want to caution you about is legislative mandates, mandating the utilities and the CPUC to approve charging infrastructure programs. I don't think those are necessary at this time. The CPUC is very pro-electric vehicles, and they're working on policies and very actively engaged in these cases, trying to get this charging station infrastructure deployed quickly and efficiently. And also, the utilities don't need to be incentivized to develop this infrastructure. This is a huge market growth potential for them, and they're very excited about it, which is why they've come up with such ambitious programs. So my closing remarks will just be, for now, please leave this to the CPUC, and if we see that there's failures, we can work on legislation, and TURN would be happy to work with anyone on that.
Assemblymember McCarty.
Sure, just a quick clarifying question. The idea is that you're providing on behalf of TURN as far as the charging stations and so forth. Are you proposing that is that done through the legislative process or the regulatory process through the PUC?
It's done through the regulatory process at the PUC.
Okay, so you're just telling us what you're working with them on.
Yes, and we're mostly here because there have been some bills this year that have come up potentially mandating electric vehicle charging stations and mandating that the CPUC approve any utility applications for that. And so that's where our concern is, because we think the CPUC has the proper expertise and knowledge to adjudicate these matters and hear both sides and come up with a well-reasoned approach.
Okay, thank you.
And I would agree, you've made some very good points, and certainly we had a bill earlier this year, which has become a 2-year bill because we wanted to see the PUC process go forward. Are there any bills that are live right now that we can, you don't have to say it in public if you don't want, but certainly if you want to talk about it, we'd be glad to hear about it.
I've just heard rumors that there was possible amendments to a bill, but nothing's been finalized.
All right. Well, certainly if something comes forward, we'll be glad to listen to what you have to say.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we're going to see someone I've known and a good friend of my son. So please come forward.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Quirk and Assemblyman McCartney. My name is Dave Pusey, speaking on behalf of NRDC. Thank you so much.
Also known as Okie. For Okinawa, not Oklahoma.
We're not supposed to say that in public.
Okay. Sorry.
Thank you guys so much for holding this hearing. As Dr. Kiesling alluded to, nearly all, I had 94%, WISPA said 97%, but nearly all of our transportation fuel here in California comes from petroleum. The Air Resources Board estimates that this dependence costs our state somewhere between $33 to $55 billion every year. And indeed, the production and use of petroleum accounts for nearly half of all of our carbon pollution, which is accelerating the cost of climate change and harms the health of our communities, especially disadvantaged communities. For all of these reasons, we applaud the goal of cutting our dependency upon petroleum by 50% by the year 2030, as set forth by the Governor and Senator DeLeon. We think this is an achievable target that will cut costs, create jobs, and reduce pollution, improving California's economy and our health. We're actually already almost halfway there, thanks to the success of California's Clean Energy Law, AB 32. And as outlined today, meeting the rest of the goal isn't going to require any far-fetched technological miracles. We simply need to do more of what we're already doing. Continuing advances in vehicle efficiency, deployment of electric cars, buses, and trucks, working to create more walkable, transit-friendly communities and decreasing the need to drive, and supporting policies like the low-carbon fuel standard, which is motivating the market to develop cleaner fuels. And if some folks tell you this can't be done, remember, we've heard that before. And over again, California has proven that we have the leadership and innovation to get big things done in reducing pollution and building a clean energy economy. So we think cutting our dependence upon petroleum in half is going to save Californians billions in avoided fuel costs, improve our air quality and health, and help create a brighter, more sustainable future. Let's get it done. Thank you.
Thanks for your very optimistic statement, and certainly we are optimistic here. The question we'll be asking, and certainly we'll be asking NRDC and EDF and other groups, is what's the best way to get there? Mm-hmm. And that's what this hearing was about. We still don't know what that is, but what is the way that's best for our residents, that is the lowest cost, highest payoff, and we're quite a ways away from knowing that now. So thank you very much for your testimony.
Oh, thank you.
Well, this has been great public testimony. Anyone else would like to speak? Is that it? All right. Well, I've never heard any better public testimony than I've heard right now. Great points brought up, and I believe a real contribution as well to this hearing. So thank you all very much for being here, and we'll adjourn until the next hearing. Oh, well, let me just give you a preview. I would like to have hearings on two other subjects. So the 50-50-50 you've heard about, this was 50% on fuels. We'd like to do one talking about what's the best way to get to 50% renewables, and then what's the best way to save energy in our buildings 50%. So those will all be coming up. I'm not sure on what time scale, but I hope that we have a similar good turnout for the next meeting. Thank you all very much.